On this week's episode of Vaticano, Pope Benedict XVI cites an important example of prayer in the life of the Holy Family. This Blessed John Paul II biographer considers the late Pope's ideas in favour of the Freedom Project. We hear from this Mexican bishop, who's now preparing for a papal visit, and take a closer look at a Vatican court devoted to consciences. Also, a Spanish saint is remembered at his final resting place in Rome's city centre. All this and the papal celebrations to ring in the new year coming up next. This crowd gathered in the Vatican's Paul VI Hall on December the 28th for the last general audience of the year 2011. In his address to them, Pope Benedict XVI looked to the Holy Family for an example of prayer.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Pax vobis. Et spiritum tuo. Our continuing catechism and prayer leads us during this Christmas season to reflect on the place of prayer in the life of the Holy Family of Nazareth. In the home of Jesus, Mary and Joseph, we learn to contemplate the mystery of God's presence and to grow as faithful disciples of Christ. The Gospels present Mary as a supreme model of prayerful meditation on the mystery of Christ's life. In praying the Rosary, in fact, we unite ourselves to a contemplation of those mysteries in faith and hope. St. Joseph fulfilled his vocation as the father of the Holy Family by teaching Jesus the importance of quiet fidelity to work, prayer and observance of the precepts of the law. Jesus' unique relationship with his Heavenly Father was reflected in the prayer life of the Holy Family and stands at the heart of all Christian prayer.
In his Italian language catechesis, the Pope said that the Holy Family's example serves an important function.
In the family, the children from the tenderest of ages can learn to perceive the sense of God, thanks to the teaching and the example of their parents, living in an atmosphere marked by the presence of God. An authentically Christian education cannot do without the experience of prayer. If one doesn't learn to pray in the family, it will then be difficult to overcome this vacuum. So I would like to invite you to rediscover the beauty of praying together as a family in the school of the Holy Family of Nazareth, in such a way becoming a single heart and soul, a true family.
He closed with a special wish in English and the apostolic blessing.
May the example of the Holy Family inspire all Christian families to be schools of prayer, where parents and children alike came to know that closeness to God, which we joyfully celebrate in these days of Christmas. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.
These folks were treated to a seminar on Blessed John Paul II and the crisis of freedom here at the Pontifical John Paul II Institute for the Studies of Marriage and the Family. This American academic and writer, who knew the late Pope well, led a series of lectures to examine the standout social issues of our times.
John Paul II extended, even as he developed, the social doctrine of the Catholic Church in a profound way. However, this was a development that, like all genuine developments of doctrine, extended the classic thinking of the Church on these matters, particularly as that classic thinking had been developed by the great Pope, who is buried just a few hundred yards from here in the Lateran Basilica, Pope Leo XIII.
One of the most interesting things about Blessed John Paul II is that this man who really never in his very adventurous life ever lived in a stable, mature democracy, nonetheless came to a penetrating understanding of the moral, cultural foundations necessary to make the democratic project work. And in his social doctrine, and in his commentary on European affairs in particular, we can find a very clear teaching that democracy requires a strong moral cultural foundation if freedom is going to result in genuine human flourishing, not in decadence and decay. So I've been trying to tease out that set of ideas through these lectures at the John Paul II Institute at the Pontifical Lateran University.
And there he hammered out his ideas on the legacy of the Polish Pope and his vision for good government.
In fact, I think John Paul II's real contribution to thinking about the future of the freedom project, if you will, throughout the world comes after the Cold War. He was certainly the pivotal figure in the collapse of European communism, but he didn't stop there. He went on to offer an analysis of why both free politics and free economics require a strong public moral culture if they are to function well. And at a moment in the history of the West where we see the inability of democratically elected legislatures to take hard decisions, we need to be asking ourselves precisely the questions that John Paul II was pressing, namely, do we have a sufficient critical mass of men and women of virtue who can make democracy work, or are we, as appears to be the case in some parts of Europe, certainly in the United States Congress in its present incarnation, condemned to a kind of gridlock in which serious problems remain unaddressed until they become crises. This is not a good situation. Mature democracies ought to be able to solve real problems when they emerge, not kick them down the road for an indeterminate period of the future. It's very clear that if each one of us only acts in our own self-interest, if we don't have a sense of the common good, if we don't have a sense of living in solidarity with others, then we get a kind of chaotic politics which eventually produces what are objectively insane situations, like the debt that a country like Greece or Italy, where we're sitting right now, has incurred. This is seriously irresponsible political behavior. But one of the reasons it's happened is not just institutional failure or the failure of politicians, it's the failure of the public to demand serious, responsible governance.
For him, if only people had followed in line with the late Pope, there would have been very different results today.
As early as 2003, the Pope was raising very serious questions about the demographic winter in which Europe has put itself, about the inability of public authorities to come to grips with real problems, about the dangers of the abortion license and a drift towards legalized euthanasia and how those practices erode the moral cultural foundations of democracy. He was on to this very early. And I think his warnings, had they been heeded, his cautions, his challenges, might have led to a different situation.
welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. Mexico has reason to celebrate this year, what with Pope Benedict XVI travelling there this spring. The nation's bishops are paving the way.
The Mexican Bishops' Conference, without a doubt, will be preparing for the visit of the Holy Father. We'll be awaiting him before Easter, just as he promised us. We've got an intense work of catechesis before us in light of his visit. It's always good to prepare people catechetically for a visit like this one of the Holy Father, whether it be on him, his person, the papal insignias, on what a pastoral visit is, because he's going to visit local churches there as the pastor of the Universal Church. We'll be taking advantage of this to catechize our people, and we'll be receiving him with much love, just as we did his predecessor, John Paul II.
There is one particular issue that the Pope can help them with.
One of the great challenges is giving our faithful the message of a parousia. A little more than 4 years ago, the Pope sent us on a mission. Not only Mexico, but the entire continent. We are all disciples and missionaries, so our work is to present the Church with a missionary face. The word of the Pope will always be welcomed in the hearts of each Mexican. It is a word of relief, one of inspiration. It is a message from the sweet Christ of the earth.
They're especially happy with the Pope's choice to announce his March trip during the Mass at St. Peter's for the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. She has a special place in the heart of all Latinos and the Americas.
Holy Mary of Guadalupe is the first missionary disciple of the continent. From her first apparitions at Tepeyac, and later for all of Mexico and the main events in the life of this nation, its independence, the revolution, all the way up to modern-day Mexico, Mary of Guadalupe has accompanied our people in its life as a nation.
Thus, there is great hope in her presence and Pope Benedict XVI as he visits the nation for the first time.
Without a doubt, after his visit, the people will remain motivated by the faith and ready to arise from their problems. Mexico is living some difficult moments. There are insecure areas, and we want peace. We want peace in Mexico, in all of the states of the Republic. We ask that of God and of the Virgin of Guadalupe.
Here within Rome's Palazzo della Cancelleria, a church court exists to serve the consciences of all the faithful. It's called the Apostolic Penitentiary, and it's located right here inside. Along with two other of the high courts of the church, the Apostolic Signatura and the Roman Rota. Though the penitentiary is normally quite secretive, this conference was held to celebrate the opening of some of its oldest archives to scholars for study. So, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is the penitentiary?
Today, undoubtedly, the penitentiary has a very important space in the Church, insofar as it's a tribunal of mercy, a court of grace. It is a tribunal that has no bureaucracy. It gives peace to the conscience of the faithful and helps them to rediscover the merciful face of the Lord. The dicastery carries out a unique activity, which treats the specific mission of the Church, that is, the salvation of souls. We take care of recourses through confessors, as their competence is limited to what's called the foro interno, the internal forum. Through confessors, we can see dispensations and graces, absolutions, and also healing of marriages, all that pertains to the internal forum, when they are exclusively secret cases.
They advise confessors on how to deal with the gravest of sins, and they do so as fast as possible.
The two elements that characterize this department are secrecy and speed. Secrecy in the sense that when a confessor makes recourse for a penitent person, he must do so by eliminating his first and last names. If the confessor includes the name of the person in the case, our first action is to remove the names as we work on them in anonymity. We give them a protocol number in such a way that when there are new recourses that pertain to that penitent person, we can locate him by way of the protocol number. But this is our attitude, and it is also a principle that everything remains secret. In this way, in our archives and those of the Curia, people never appear by name. The other characteristic is the speed of our responses. We, by our own statutes, must respond to recourses within 24 hours if they have a simple solution. If they are more complex recourses that require a special attention and study, we may respond in 3 to 4 days. But we have a commitment to being quick because, as our aim is the salvation of souls, we don't want the penitent person to be in pain of mortal sin.
It might seem like a difficult task to deal with these difficult situations quickly.
We are actually very happy to do so. Not because we work with nice things, but because we are happy that through these recourses we can give tranquility and serenity to people's conscience. If someone seeks aid from the penitentiary, that means they have been touched by the grace of the Lord, that they want to put themselves back in the grace of God, and we are happy to be able to offer this service of mercy, piety, and charity.
So, from here in the centre of Rome, people across the world are being aided as they seek absolution. Here, just off one of the main streets in the historic centre of Rome, lies a saint who has left a 400-year imprint on the education of children.
Bueno, bienvenidos a la casa de San José de Calas, a la casa madre de las escuelas pías.
Welcome to the house of St. Joseph of Calasans and the mother house of the pious schools. St. Joseph Calasans lived amidst the Counter-Reform from 1557 to 1648. And he brought to the Counter-Reform the great idea that the reform of the Church and the reform of society is done through the education of all. So he opened the first popular school for all in 1597 here in Rome, St. Dorothy's School. And afterwards he moved it into the middle of Rome so that the children could come more easily. And he bought this house in 1612. He lived here for 36 years, and here also he died. Also here he founded the pious schools for the fourth vow we have of teaching. He is the patron saint of children. And certainly, as he said, the majority of children are poor, and for that reason he chose also poverty and simplicity. This tomb was paid for by the Prince of Torlonia, but we have access to the simple tomb of Calasans, which we're going to see now.
Back behind the altar is the original tomb.
Esta es la tumba sencilla de Calasans, que nos inspira más.
This is the simple tomb of St. Joseph Calasans. It inspires us more as to his spirit of poverty and simplicity. To work with children, he had to be simple. So this is his tomb, a simple tomb. Here in the corridor next to the simple tomb are paintings of the saints and blesseds of the Calasansian family. These families include all of the spiritual groups that through the centuries have been born in the Church, having been inspired by the figure of St. Joseph, and thus carry his name. They are not of the purest order, but they carry his name.
He would have walked these stairs to reach the chapel and his room.
In
this chapel, the order was founded. Here, Calasans met with his true companions. But it was only in 1925 when we bought the house back. The paintings here are by a painter named Calcan de Oro, while that one behind the altar is from the time of Calasans and represents the pious schools, the schools of the Virgin of the Snows here at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major. And next to this was Calasans' room, which he wanted here as the director of the school so he could keep track of the classes. This is the room of St. Joseph Calasans, which is unique in all of Rome. When he died, they closed and locked the door. No one ever lived here but him. Here, all of his things were kept exactly as he left them. So this door is the same one the saint used.
Estos son los muebles que tiene en su habitación.
This is the furniture he had in his room. By the crutch, you can see how tall he was at 90 years old. These are all things an antique collector would enjoy, as they are of an extraordinary authenticity.
Bien, había tantos objetos que hubo que poner.
There were so many objects there that some had to be put in these cabinets, as they didn't all fit so his room could be seen well. Here we have objects that St. Joseph Calasans used, and the wealth of it all is impressive. In the middle, there are some reliquaries. After 100 years, when they beatified him, they found him incorrupt. These relics truly represent the spirit of the order. So what is the spirit of the order? Educating in love, teaching with patience, and with study and humility.
All of this exists as the testament to a life spent for the glory of God, for the good of children and mankind. Here at Rome's St. Joseph Calasans Institute, the saint's legacy finds a home.
God can do great things. St. Joseph Calasans understood the majesty of these words. In society in the 1600s, where children were often abandoned or weren't allowed to speak, Calasans chose these children as the privileged object of his mission.
Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. Pope Benedict XVI closed 2011 and rang in the new year at the Vatican in celebration. Here at St. Peter's Basilica on December the 31st, he presided over Vespers, wrapping up the year with the Te Deum and a meditation on the meaning of the days past and the days to come.
Another year is drawing to a close as we await the start of a new one, with some trepidation, with our perennial desires and expectations. Reflecting on our life experience, we are continually astonished by how ultimately short and ephemeral life is. So we often find ourselves asking, what meaning can we give to our days? What meaning in particular can we give to the days of toil and grief? This is a question that permeates history. Indeed, it runs through the heart of every generation and every individual. But there is an answer. It is written on the face of a child who was born in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago, and is today the living one, risen forever from the dead.
The next day, the 1st of January 2012, the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God. He tagged the theme of motherhood into the day's celebration of the 45th World Day for Peace.
Cari amici, la pace.
Dear friends, peace in the fullest and highest sense is the sum and synthesis of all blessings. So when two friends meet, they greet one another, wishing each other peace. The Church, too, on the first day of the year, invokes this supreme good in a special way. She does so, like the Virgin Mary, by revealing Jesus to all. For as St. Paul says, He is our peace, and at the same time the way by which individuals and peoples can reach this goal to which we all aspire.
This year's World Peace Day theme focuses on educating young people to achieve positive results. The Pope had some words of encouragement for those who might form them.
Vorrei invece sottolineare
I would like to underline the fact that, in the face of the shadows that obscure the horizon of today's world, to assume responsibility for educating young people in knowledge of the truth, in fundamental values and virtues, is to look to the future with hope. And in this commitment to a holistic education, formation in justice and peace has a place. Boys and girls today are growing up in a world that has, so to speak, become smaller, where contacts between different cultures and traditions, even if not always direct, are constant. For them, now more than ever, it is indispensable to learn the importance and the art of peaceful coexistence, mutual respect, dialogue, and understanding.
Closing the Mass, Pope Benedict XVI set out to begin the year 2012, which will be the 7th of his pontificate.